Okay, so now I'm in your classroom, right? So if you go to your Google Classroom, what I have done is, if you open up your classwork, click on your classwork, I've added in your recovery work for you there on the top so that you don't have to search for it every time, right? So you just click on your recovery work, okay, and you search for accounting, and accounting is normally the first one there. Okay, so it's recovery content, and then you go to grade 10, right? And then the grade 10 notes, okay? Those are assessments, which we'll do a bit later on. Grade 10 notes, right? So where we are, we're busy with general journal. Okay, so if you look at general journal, uh, I've done this one today. So click on those notes there, right? So it's doing interest on overdue debtors, and then we're going to do interest on overdue creditors. So in the first video, I've summarized it for you what is happening here, but when you have time, you can read through all this here on your own time. Okay, so on the next example, on the next page is the example number 1, and I've used the same one to explain it in the first video so that we can follow the general journal here, right? So what it's saying is required is charge the overdue account of G Scoop 400 Rand with 12% interest per annum for 3 months. Show the following in the books of ZZ Traders. So that's why in the first video I went over how we've calculated the interest from the 400 Rand and the 12% per annum, and how we have 3 months, right? Now show the transactions in the general journal, post it to the general ledger and the debtors ledger, and then you're showing the effect on the accounting equation. So here's our general journal. Okay, so this memo you use to study. So what we've done, and I've showed you the T accounts, we debited our debtor, G Scoop, with the amount of interest we calculated for 3 months, which is 12 Rand. So you're putting 12 Rand in your debit. Then we've credited interest on overdue accounts, on overdue debtors, and we've put in 12 Rand credit. So that was the debtor that got debited and the income that got credited. So we write it like that. The one you're writing first is debit, you skip a space and you're showing that that one is credited, and you're putting in your amount in the debit column and the credit column, right? And then here you can see what has happened is you've got debtors control and creditors control. We're working with debtors now, so we have a debit of 12 Rand in our debtors control. Okay, so that's a general journal of ZZ Traders. Your narration here says interest on overdue account at 12% per annum for 3 months. So you have to use your transaction and you just make a logical narration for what you have done there. So that's how we enter the T accounts into the general journal. Now we're putting it into the ledger. Okay, we've done the T accounts there. So we have 2 accounts. The debtors control gets debited. Okay, that's the balance brought down. That's obviously given to you in the question. 31st of January, they've brought journal debits from where? From the general journal. So look at what they've written there, journal debits, and you're debiting your debtor with 12 Rand. Then your interest on your overdue account on the 31st of January was G Scoop. We charged him in the general journal 12 Rand. So you'll see the T accounts in the previous video. You're debiting your debtor or your debtor's control, and you're crediting your interest on your overdue account, and that debit is there, which they're saying journal debits, right? So the interest on overdue accounts, you will show who you're charging, because in some huge businesses they have lots of debtors that they're charging, so they need to see which debtor has to be charged that 12 Rand. Now we're going to the debtors ledger. So G Scoop, you can see the name of his debtor, he's number D1, and on the 1st of January, account rendered 400 Rand balance. So he owed you 400 Rand balance. You brought it from the previous months. He's owing you 400 Rand. So what did we do on the 31st? From the journal, general journal, we've debited him with 12 Rand. So we're adding 400 plus the 12 Rand. So now he's owing us 412 Rand. So he hasn't come back and bought anything. So there's no invoice number. That's why it's a general journal. There's no cash involved. There's no stock involved. It's just he's being charged with interest. So now he doesn't owe us 400 Rand anymore. He owes us 412 Rand. Let's see what happens on the accounting equation. that we've done the T account. So if you know how to do the T account, you know how to do the ledger, you know how to do the accounting equation, it all becomes simple, right? So the account we debit is debtors, the account we credit is interest on overdue account, and remember this is an income, that is an asset. So what is happening to our asset? When an asset gets debited, our asset is plused with 12 Rand, and what happens to income? Income makes our owner's equity happy and makes it better. So owner's equity gets a plus of 12 Rand. We have no liabilities, and we normally put down a 0 for liabilities. Okay. So this activity here is your homework for today, right? So what you can do is, if you have access to a printer, you can print it out, or if not, you can just draw this into your books and you can do it in your book, right? Or an exam pad if you don't have your book either. So your activity is you're required to charge the overdue account of B Beloye 1200 Rand with 2.5% interest per month for 3 months. So now there's the three things, right? So if you watch the video, you'll see that's your invoice amount, that's your interest. Now look at this question here, right? With interest per month, 12% interest per month for 3 months. Show the transactions in the general journal, post to the general ledger, and post to the debtors ledger accounts, and show the effect on the accounting equation. So what you're going to do is, you're going to do exactly what you did in example 1. You go through the video, you go through example 1, and then you try to complete the general journal of ZZ Traders. This is another debtor that's owing them money at 2.5% interest per month for 3 months. So what we're doing now is we're going to do the same thing, the general ledger, the debtors ledger, and then we'll carry on to interest on overdue creditors. Okay, just a note on this example here. You can see in that, can you see example 1, right? Let me just go back there. Sorry, I'm going to example 1. Right, so this one here told us 400 Rand with 12% interest per annum for 3 months. So what did I do? I used my 400 Rands, right? And I said multiplied by 12%, and then I have to multiply it by 3/12 to get to 12 Rands. Okay, now I want you to look at this one here and apply yourself a little bit. This activity is showing you 1200 Rand is your invoice amount, but now only 2.5% interest per month. Okay, so when you're doing the example, remember you're going to take your invoice amount and you're going to calculate 2.5% of 1200 Rand. It's going to give you the amount of interest you're charging him per month, not the interest for the year like how we did that one there. Then you're going to multiply it by 3 months and work out your amount. Okay, so just try to do it, and then we'll carry on to interest on overdue creditors.